In this lesson, we're going to look at some nice and simple ways to spice up our open position chord playing. We'll do this by adding some riffs, some licks, and some good old bluesy touches to 4 very simple chords. The context here is a moody, Tom Waits-esque style blues in the key of A minor. As rhythm and lead players alike, we tend to spend a lot of our time playing these open position chord progressions, but we often neglect to find interesting ways to navigate between these changes, or add fills and lead lines in and around them. And today we're going to try and put that right. As always, you can get my full lesson materials for this one at the links in the description. That'll include tabs and notation in Guitar Pro and PDF formats. It'll also include audio files of my performance at the beginning and my backing track. And all of this is available by joining my Patreon for just £10 a month, where you'll get access to all of my lessons, past, present and future, or you can grab this as a one-off purchase over at the Gumroad link. Either way, I really do appreciate your support. Thank you. So this progression is a very simple one. We're in the key of A minor and we're playing a 1-4-5. So A minor is the 1, D minor is the 4, E or E7 is the 5. At one point we also use a little passing chord, Tom Waits style, the F7 before the E7. That's a nice little touch, especially for a turnaround. First thing we're going to do is lock in the groove and get the feel right. So let's grab this A minor chord and we're going to play a very simple alternating bass, Chet Atkins style. Root, 5th. So that's the open A string, then I'm striking the chord, then I'm hitting the low open E string, and then striking the chord. Now technique wise we want to palm mute throughout. So I'm making sure that the side of my hand is rested on the strings just in front of the saddles, enough to get that nice percussive bass note. And that's going to be the same on the low open E string. But when I strike the chord, I'm using a bit of what I'd call damping as opposed to necessarily palm muting. It's a little different in that the hand isn't resting on the strings when we strike, but it lands on the strings as I strike. So the plectrum hits the strings and the side of the hand brushes against them along the way. So you got... Now if you really want to get that Tom Waits feel dialed up to 10, add a couple of little upstrokes here and there on the offbeat. Let some of them ring out as well, don't palm mute them. Add more. Now the first blues style riff we're going to throw in here is a very common bass line that you want to get used to throwing in on your open chords, where you add the flat 7 in. So we've got the root, chord, 5th, flat 7, courtesy of the little finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string. That's a very simplified version of it, using only downstrokes. Dial that in, get it on every beat, then bring the technique in the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now we want to find the equivalent thing on the D minor chord. I'd recommend playing it this way, with the little finger on the 3rd fret of the B string rather than the 3rd finger. You'll see why in a minute. Again, if we transfer the bass line we had before, you've got the root, this time that's the open D string, and you're going to hit the chord and then go back down to the open A string, because that would be the 5th of the chord. And remember, this is always a root, 5th bass line. Root, 5th, root, 5th. And again, bring in that flat 7 to add the blues riff. That's on the 3rd fret of the A string this time. And now you can see why we kept the 3rd finger spare, right? Now just to be thorough, let's carry that blues riff onto the E chord, even though we don't actually do that in this particular study. So the E chord, again you'd have the root and the 5th in the bass. This time the root is the open low E string and the 5th is above the pitch of the root on this occasion, at the 2nd fret of the A string. Root, 5th, root, 5th. Now if we want to use that blues bass line again where we bring the 3rd in, of course because this is a major chord, it would be a major 3rd this time. So the stretch is going to feel kind of tricky. You're going to have to reach your little finger all the way out to the 4th fret of the low E string to get that G sharp note. And just while we're on the subject, if you wanted to, you could add the minor third as a passing note. So those are some of the fundamentals, some of the essential movements we're going to be putting around these chords. Get that really firmly embedded in the muscle memory before moving on to the next stage. Okay, so now let me just walk you through the entire study and we'll uncover some other little secrets as we go. So we start with this little pickup line, which is a nice little blues scale lick, A minor pentatonic with the flatted 5th added. So we're starting with a little slide on the little finger, from 3 to 5 on the B string, and then getting that unison note, courtesy of the open E. And then a little pull off from the blue note, and down the scale, pull off to the open string, and resolve it onto beat 1 of the A minor chord. Now we see the D minor on the horizon. So we're going to walk chromatically to it, thinking of D as the target, coming down a whole step to C, and walking through the C sharp to get to it. It's really important to practice all of those little connections. From any chord you're on, you want to be able to walk down the bass notes to get to the next chord, or walk up the bass notes to get to the next chord. Now on the D minor we get that groove going. And then this time we're going to use a bit of the D minor blues scale as opposed to the A minor blues scale. That's going to lead us back home to the A minor chord. What I'm playing here is a little hammer-on from the flatted 5th to the 5th. And again, use your little finger to anchor down on this D root note. And then pull off, go the other way to the open string from the 1st fret. And I'm always hitting both those strings together there. You could always use the pick for that, or you can hybrid pick it, whatever you prefer. And then come down the D minor blues scale, resolve back to the A minor. Just while we're on the subject of the blues scale, don't neglect the open position. I highly recommend working on all of your blues scales in open position. For example, the D minor. Get the double stops on the go. Same applies for the A minor blues scale. Double stops. And of course the E blues scale. And I'll type all of those up in the lesson materials for you. Okay, so where were we? D minor, heading back to A minor, courtesy of the D blues scale. Now we're back on the A minor, getting that groove going again. And then we're going to walk down to the E7. Or the E major first of all, actually. So 3, 1, and then a 0, courtesy of the E chord. We're just using things from an A minor scale there. A natural minor would be the scale if we're being specific. That walks us down to the E chord very nicely. And then I add the flat 7 later on with the little finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. Timing wise, I'm bringing that in on the and of 4 after a bit of the alternating bass pattern. We let it all kind of loosen up there, we lose the palm muting feel for a moment. And then to get back to the A minor, we're going to use the A minor blues scale. These little trills are always really nice. Work on getting those things really nice and snappy under the fingers. Back to the usual groove for a bar. Now we're heading from A minor to D minor. We can use the A minor blues scale and do some of these Jerry Reed style double stops again. Resolving to the D minor chord. Just to break that little double stop lick down, the A minor blues scale, you got the flat 5 and the root. The root's going to stay on top there with the 3rd finger. Hammer on from the 1st to 2nd fret of the D string, then go back to the first fret, pull off to the other side, the open string. And then you've got the flatted third with the little finger on the third fret of the A string. And you can add trills as and when you like. The exact thing that I play here is this. Resolving it to the D minor chord. I would practice it without moving on to the D minor chord after. First of all, just get used to this. Keeping it on the A minor, because that's truly where it really belongs. And again, you've got the choice. You can hybrid pick this stuff. Or use a plectrum throughout. So back to the actual study, we play that lick, resolve it to a D minor chord, and then a bit more of the D minor blues scale, taking us to that beautiful F7 chord. Notice how that third fret of the A string stays while we form the chord around it. And then we go back to the E7 again. We can add that flat 7 as and when we like, really. I've kind of gone Doc Watson style here, putting a little bend on it. And then that same chromatic idea we used earlier to get from the A to the D minor, this time we're using it to get from the E to the A minor. You think of A as your target, go down a whole tone, G, and then just go through the passing note, G sharp, and there's the A. And then finish. Now, of course, even just with that stuff, there's endless possibilities and variations available. Here are a couple of honourable mentions. One thing that I mentioned earlier on, but we didn't actually apply in the piece itself, is over the E chord to bring in a bit of the E minor blues scale. Works especially well to get you back from the E to the A minor in this case. So we might play something like this. Or point being, use a bit of the E blues scale as a way of tying back into the A minor chord. I'll also add those two variations onto the tab sheet. Okay, just a little bit of gear talk before I sign off. So this is my Nachocaster, incredible guitar with the original Nachocaster 50s style pickups. For the lesson I'm on the middle position just to keep things a little less spiky and aggressive sounding. But on the actual performance at the start I was on the bridge pickup with the tone rolled back just a tiny little bit, but not much at all. I'm running through a really old barefoot Honey Bee overdrive pedal. It used to be my favourite overdrive, and then it sat on a shelf for a while, and now I've kind of gone back to it, having a bit of a nostalgia trip. And it does sound brilliant, to be fair. You know, if you want that kind of Keith Richards-y, broken up tweed amp sound, it's hard to beat it. And that's running into my all original 1964 Princeton Reverb amp. Well, all original except for the speaker. That's got a Jupiter 10-inch speaker in there at the moment, and I really like the sound of it. And the reverb and trem are courtesy of the amp as well. The strings are Pyramid nickel classics, and they're 10 to 46 gauge, and I'm using a Dunlop H3 pick. I'm recording the amp through my Universal Audio aux box. That goes into my Apollo interface, which then goes into Logic Pro, where I add just the smallest little bit of compression and EQ, just to make it sit in the mix a little nicer. Oh, and I should mention, if you want to hear the stuff that inspires this sort of a groove, check out Tom Waits. Quite a few of his tunes have this kind of a feel, but a couple in particular to check out that have this feel, both off the Real Gone album, are Green Grass and How's It Gonna End. Also, while you're at it, may as well check out Hoist That Rag and Make It Rain off that same album. Incredible guitar work by Marc Ribot on those ones. Okay, so I hope that's given you something interesting to think about, some nice little ideas to work on. I'd really highly recommend getting very comfortable with your open position chord playing and get used to spicing it up a little bit. Apply these sorts of things to both major chords and minor chords and tackle as many keys and chord progressions as you can. Well, thanks for joining me, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson, and I'll see you next time for something totally different. All right, take care.